Today I'm going to be talking about the new Cosmic Brushes launch, the Lovers Palette. We're going to talk about launch details, I'm going to do in-depth swatches, I'll show you how to get this look, and then at the end I'll give you my thoughts and first impressions of the palette. Also, hi, my name is Nupur, I love indie makeup and all things color and sparkle. Please consider subscribing if you enjoy makeup content like this because there's going to be a lot more to come. Before we get started, I want to mention a few important things. First of all, I have photo swatches over on Instagram of this palette, which I feel like between those swatches and the ones I'm going to do here in this video, you'll be able to get a pretty well-rounded idea of what these eyeshadows look like. But I've also posted a few of those photos over here on YouTube on my community tab. Secondly, I'm still playing around with my lighting for YouTube, so this is slightly different than my last video, and I want you guys to let me know how you think this compares to that one, whether you think this is better, whether you think the other one was better, and I'm going to continue playing around until I get it just how I want it. And then the really important thing to mention is that I received this palette in PR from Cosmic Brushes, and I now have an affiliate code with the brand, which is just my name, Nupur. I'll put it up on the screen here, and thank you so much if you decide to use it. It really means a lot to me. Lastly, this is really important too. Please, please, please don't feel pressure to buy this palette just because I'm talking about how beautiful it is or how much I like it or just yapping about the special shimmers. I simply want to make this video to give you as much information as possible about the palette. Okay, now that that's all out of the way, let's get into the palette. So first, let me give you some launch details. This palette is launching on Friday, January 31st at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time for £26, which converts to around 32 to 33 US dollars. So here's the palette cover. It's tarot card themed, which I love so much, both in concept and the artwork itself. I believe the owner designed this artwork herself, which I think is so cool. And because it's tarot card theme, it actually opens up this way instead of some of their other palettes, which open up, this way. What I meant to say is their other palettes open up this way. This is a 20 pan palette, which is the same as a lot of their other palettes. This one has 12 mattes and 8 shimmers. Of the 8 shimmers, 1 is a multi-chrome, 2 are duochromes, and the rest are regular shimmers. Here are all of the mattes. I want to quickly note that the mid-tone green is a sparkle matte. The overall matte formula here is thinner, but still pigmented, not a lot of kick up in the pan. I find their formula generally very easy to work with and build up slowly while blending out. The pastels were a little hard to build up, but fine over primer. Here are all of the shimmers in my photo setup. None of them are flaky or squishy, but they are generally creamy and pretty soft. This is the shade Connection. This is the one multi-chrome in the palette. It has a pigmented purple base and shifts pink, peach, gold, and even green at the harshest angle. It has a small particle size and is very sparkly. The base is pigmented and there are no purple mattes in the palette to pair that base with, but you can definitely sheer it out so that it's not as vibrant and will pair easier with other shades. This is the shade Choices. It has a black and plum base with purple, pink, and peach shifts and a few tiny pinpricks of blue sparkle throughout. It is smooth and has a fine particle size. This one is the least sparkly of all the shades, and the shifts are a little weak. I think this one would make a great base shade for layering, especially for smoky eyes. This is the shade Faithful. It has a very sheer neutral base with a gold reflect and pink sparkles mixed in. It has a bit of texture but smooths out easily. This one has such a dimensional finish to it, even though it's more of a basic neutral. The sheer base makes it a topper material and also a good inner corner shade. This is the shade Companion. It has a sheer neutral base and a pink gold shift with a dimensional finish. This one is smooth and has a small particle size. It is similar to the previous shade Faithful, but reads more rosy overall. It also isn't as topper-like as the previous shade. The multicolored sparkles in this shade don't stand out as much because the pink shift is visible as light hits the shade straight on, but the contrasting gold sparkles blend in as the shade shifts to gold at an angle. This is the shade Promise. This has a sheer pale green base. There is a layer of smooth metallic gold sparkles and then slightly larger green sparkles mixed throughout. This one is super sparkly, another dimensional topper-like shade that would also make a good inner corner shade. This is the shade Communication. This shade has a medium deep grungy green base with tiny green and gold sparkles. This one has a more standard metallic formula and finish to it, so it's not as sparkly as the other shades, but there is still dimension to it. It's another one that would make a great base shade for layering. This is the shade Truth. This one has a deeper pigmented teal base with gold sparkles that shift to a light green. The sparkles have a little texture to them, but it smooths out easily. It is super sparkly. This one is interesting because the yellow sparkles combine with a blue base to make the sparkles look a little green at times. This is the shade Loyal. This one has a sheer gray base and medium-sized silver and blue sparkles. But there are also tiny pinpricks of gold sparkle that make it so interesting and dimensional. This one is not as topper-like as some of the previous shades, but I would still use this for layering. Okay, for the look, I think I actually want to focus on some of the green tones, at least to start with. because there have been a lot of pink and red and purple launches for Valentine's Day, of course, understandably. But maybe I will pull in some pink for the lid. We'll see. And I think I actually want to start with the green sparkle matte because I am always saying that I don't really enjoy sparkle mattes, but I think I mind it less when they are lighter colors, and especially with this shade, the sparkles are a gold against a green, so I feel like it's not as obvious and contrasting as it is with like a black matte with blue sparkles or something like that. I'm starting with it in my crease. I'm not really going to do anything too complicated since I'm still getting used to doing my makeup in a slightly lower pace for YouTube. So I'm just going to keep it simple. Okay, so I don't know if you're going to be able to see this on camera, but a lot of the sparkle did blend away, but there is some sparkle left behind. And that's my experience with sparkle mattes, is that a lot of it blends away. So the stuff that's left behind, it doesn't feel intentional, I guess. It doesn't feel like it's meant to be there. And so I always think, why not just make it a matte? I'm also running this along my lower lash line, and as I'm doing it, I'm noticing that there are some sparkles, like there's a bit of fallout. And I'm not someone who really minds fallout, even with my actual shimmers. Like, I'll be messy and just slap them on and be okay with the fallout. But if you care about that, I would suggest doing your eyes first and your base last if you're going to use the sparkle matte. Next, I'm going to take the dark olive green for my outer corner. So I already did the other eye, and you will see as I do this eye, I really love how easy it is to diffuse Cosmic Brushes mattes. Like, this took me no time at all. It's very easy, but yeah, I'm definitely noticing a lot of those sparkles from the sparkle matte, even here on the outer corner. Once again, I'm going to run it on my lower lash line, but just on the outer third this time. And then I decided that I actually want more depth in the outer corner, so I'm building up that matte again because I think some of the depth got lost when I was blending out the outer edge. And then I'm just going to bring it a little bit into the crease just to make sure there are no harsh lines there, and also deepen it up just a touch over here. Also, I should have mentioned this when I first started the look, but I'm still playing around with my lighting, and this is slightly different from the lighting in my last video, at least for this makeup portion. So let me know if you like this one better, because I feel like it's less harsh, so you can see some of the colors and the depth a little better. So I think for the lid, for the shimmers, I'm going to do a little shade cascade, which if you don't know what that is, if you don't follow me on Instagram, it's my term for layering shimmers, or even a shimmer over a matte, but over here I'm going to be layering shimmers, and I really want to do that with this palette specifically because some of the shimmers are more smooth metallics and some of them are more topper-like, and so I think this palette lends itself really well to layering. The first shimmer I'm going to take is Communication, and I'm first going to put that on the outer corner, so the bulk of the pigment will be here, and then with whatever's left in the brush, slowly start feathering that inwards. I actually went back in for another dip with the brush, but the reason I like to use a brush for the base shimmer, at least if it's a darker shade like this one, is because brushes tend to pick up less pigment than your fingers, and so it won't deposit too much in the lid. And especially with a darker shimmer like this, I don't want it to be too dark as the base. But that's also why I started on my outer corner, because I wanted most of the darkness to be out here and then for it to get lighter as I went inwards. Again, I don't know if you're going to be able to tell with this lighting, but this shimmer is not as sparkly as some of the other ones in this palette, like the more topper-like ones, so I feel like it makes a really good base shimmer for the shade Cascade. Then for the topper shimmer, I'm going to use the shade Faithful. And this time, I did use my finger because I want more pigment. I'm applying it in a tapping motion because I want it to rest on top of the previous shimmer rather than mixing in with it. Here's what it looks like now that I've layered the shimmers. For the inner corner, I'm going to use the shade Promise. People always ask me what my favorite inner corner brushes are, and my favorite and oldest ones are from a brand I no longer support. These brushes are like probably 6 to 7 years old, if not older. So I probably shouldn't even be using them. But this one that I'm using right now is actually from Cosmic Brushes, and I'll link it in the description box because I think it's a really good alternative to those other brushes. Taking it up into my inner swoop, as always. Here is the final look with mascara on. Here is the final look again in all of its sparkly glory, and I'm going to bring it a little out of focus so you can see the little multicolored sparkles as well. And I'll have all of my other makeup details in the description box. Now, before we get into my thoughts on this palette, I want to emphasize that this is more of a first impressions because I've only used the palette once on my eyes today, so that's really not enough time to formulate a full, well-rounded opinion of the palette. Okay, so first things first, I love the color story because I'm a sucker for all things Valentine's Day, and this really hits the mark. That being said, I don't love every single part of this color story, and one thing that I don't like is the inclusion of this matte black because I just don't use matte blacks in general, and if I really need one, I can pull one in. I mostly only use them for liner. I'll rarely use them for deepening up, and if I'm going to deepen up, I would much rather have a deep, dark, colorful matte, and I feel like this is a missed opportunity to have a deep blue to pair with these ones over here because you have this deep, you know, burgundy color over here, you have a deeper olive shade over here, and this I think is, it's not super deep, but it can be used to add depth, and I feel like with the colors in this palette, this could have been a dark blue and that would have worked so well. And then the other thing, which I already talked about, is I don't really love sequin mattes, and you saw how I felt about that in the tutorial, so I won't yap about it too much, but yeah, I think this could have been just a regular mid-tone green and it would have been great. But aside from those two shades, I think the mattes are a really good variety both in tone and in depth. I like that you have pastels, you have your mid-tones, and then you also have deepening up shades, which so many palettes miss that mark, and it's hard to create, you know, full cohesive looks with just one palette. But with this one, I feel like I can get a good range of looks, so I really appreciate the variety in the mattes. Okay, now I'm really excited because I get to talk about the shimmers, which are my favorite, let's be real. But I want to mention that I have not tried Cosmic Brushes since the Muse palette, so I know that they've had several palettes come out in between these two, and holy cow, I did not realize that they have improved their shimmers so much because I really, really do enjoy the Muse palette, and my biggest critique with that palette is that the shimmers are a little lacking for me, so I like using them as base shades, and there are a couple shimmers that are good, but for the most part, I like to pull in other shimmers to use with that palette. But with this one, I could see myself using it just on its own and not needing to pull in any additional shimmers. And now I really want to try some of their other recent palettes to see if the shimmers are on this level. The shimmers in this palette actually remind me a little bit of the Unearthly shimmers from the Sorcerer's Smoke palette onwards. Not in formula, but more so in finish. They have that ultra sparkly dimensional look to them while still looking very refined on the eyes and not textured. So all that considered, I really want to mention that the price point for this palette is phenomenal. At $32, $33, you know, conversion rates will vary, but around that price point to get 20 shades and 8 of those are beautiful shimmers, I think is incredible. This part is just speculation, but I feel like maybe the reason that the price point is more on the affordable side is that there's only one true multi-chrome in this palette, and then there are 2 duochromes, and the brand calls the rest of the shimmers regular metallics, but I feel like only 2 of them are more on the regular metallic side, which means that the rest of them are really special sparkly shades. So I don't know what they're doing over at Cosmic Brushes, but I hope they keep doing it. And once again, all that being said, the formula of these is slightly on the creamy side, not overly emollient, but not as dry as some other formulas. So I'm not sure how these would work for those of you who regularly experience creasing. I don't usually experience creasing, so for me, these shimmers are great for me, but I really can't speak to how they'll perform on other people. And then really quickly, I just want to show you the Lovers next to Muse because I feel like people are going to ask for comparisons between the two, and I'm not doing full in-depth comparisons because I really don't think the shimmers are comparable at all. And even the mattes, I don't feel like there's much overlap between this and this, so I'm not going to do swatch comparisons, but I'll hold them up for you side by side so you can see them together. And that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. It means the world to me that you're here and you want to hear my thoughts on makeup. If you made it to the end of this video, maybe leave a comment on what your favorite shimmer was. And if you like this video, please give it a like and comment and consider subscribing. Bye!